The stars looked different from the observation deck of the Velkari diplomatic vessel. Ambassador Dalrek stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the blue and green planet grow larger in the viewport. This was Kepler 442b, a human colony world, and today would mark the first official contact between the Velkari Empire and humanity. Dalrek felt nervous, though he would never admit it to his crew. The Velkari had encountered dozens of species across the galaxy, and every successful relationship began the same way, with the thought-sharing ritual. It was how his people built trust. Words could lie, but minds could not. When two beings shared their thoughts, truth became absolute. "Ambassador, we are receiving clearance to dock at their orbital station," said his aide, a young female named Corsa. She bowed her head slightly, her silver skin reflecting the lights of the control panels. "Good. Inform Cleric Tholmus to prepare for the ceremony," Dalrek replied. He felt a flutter of anticipation through the telepathic network that connected all Velkari on the ship. His crew was excited. First contact always was exciting. The human station was crude compared to Velkari architecture. Metal corridors painted in dull whites and grays, harsh artificial lighting, and strange symbols on every wall. But it was clean and organized. Dalrek noticed that much as he walked through the docking tunnel with his delegation. Cleric Tholmus walked beside him, wearing the traditional robes of a mind reader. Tholmus was old, nearly 300 cycles, and he had performed thousands of thought-sharing rituals. If anyone could make this first contact smooth, it was him. They entered a large meeting room where the humans waited. Dalrek studied them carefully. They were bipedal like his own people, but covered in skin tones ranging from pale cream to dark brown. They had hair growing from their heads in various colors and styles. Their eyes were small and their faces expressive in ways Dalrek found difficult to read. One human stepped forward. He was middle-aged by human standards, with short dark hair touched with gray at the temples. His skin was a medium tan color, and his eyes were dark and alert. He wore a simple blue uniform with some kind of insignia on the chest. "Ambassador Dalrek," the human said, his voice rough but not unfriendly. "I am Hyan Wu, Colonial Administrator of Kepler 442b. Welcome to our home." Dalrek bowed in the Velkari fashion, one hand over his heart. "Administrator Hyan Wu, we are honored to meet you. May I introduce Cleric Tholmus, who will guide us through the traditional greeting of our people." Hyan Wu nodded and gestured to the two humans beside him. "This is Baora, our chief engineer, and Taejin, head of security." Baora was a woman with long dark hair, pulled back in a practical style. She smiled warmly. Taejin was tall and muscular, his expression carefully neutral. Both nodded in greeting. "Your message said you wanted to perform a ritual," Hyan Wu said. "Something about sharing thoughts?" "Yes," Dalrek explained. "The Velkari are a telepathic species. We communicate through mental connection as easily as you communicate through speech. For us, a thought-sharing ritual is how we establish trust. When minds touch, deception becomes impossible. We see each other's intentions clearly." Hyan Wu glanced at his companions. Baora looked curious but uncertain. Taejin's expression grew more guarded. There was a long pause as the humans seemed to communicate something without words, though Dalrek felt no telepathic energy between them. How strange to be so isolated in one's own mind. What exactly does this ritual involve? Hyan Wu asked. Tholmus stepped forward, his voice gentle and calming. "I would place my hand upon your temple and open a connection between our minds. I would see your surface thoughts, your current feelings and intentions. It lasts only a moment. There is no pain, no invasion of your deeper memories. Think of it as shaking hands, but with consciousness instead of flesh." "Can you see everything?" Taejin asked, his tone sharp. "Every memory? Every secret?" "No," Tholmus assured him. only what you are actively thinking in the present moment. Your deeper mind remains private, unless you choose to share it. Haiyan Wu looked at Beora and Taejin again. They seemed to have a silent conversation with glances and small gestures. Finally, Haiyan Wu turned back to Dalrek. If this is important to your people, I will agree. But I do this as a gesture of good faith, not as a requirement. We need to establish that clearly. Of course, Dalrek said, feeling relieved. We ask, never demand. Your willingness is appreciated. Haiyan Wu walked to the center of the room. Tolmas approached him slowly, respectfully. The old cleric was nearly a head taller than the human, and his silver skin seemed to glow faintly in the station's harsh lighting. Relax, Tolmas said softly. Think of something peaceful. Something that makes you happy. Haiyan Wu nodded. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Dalrek watched through the telepathic network, sensing Tholmas extending his consciousness like a hand reaching out in darkness. Tholmas placed his long fingers against Haiyan Wu's temple. For a moment, nothing happened. Dalrek felt Tholmas's mind brush against something, making contact, beginning to read the surface thoughts of this alien being. Then, Tholmas screamed. It was a sound Dalrek had never heard from the calm, ancient cleric. A sound of pure terror and agony. Tholmas stumbled backward, his hands clutching his head, his mouth open in a continuous shriek that echoed off the metal walls. The humans jumped back in shock. Taejin reached for a weapon at his belt. Ba'ara grabbed Haiyan Wu's arm and pulled him away from the collapsing Velkari. What did you do? Taejin shouted, his weapon now pointed at the Velkari delegation. Nothing. Haiyan Wu shouted back. I didn't do anything. I just thought about my family. Dalrek and Corsa rushed to Tholmas, who had fallen to his knees. The cleric's screams continued, his eyes wild and unseeing. Through the telepathic network, Dalrek felt only chaos and terror radiating from Tholmas's mind. No coherent thoughts. No recognizable patterns. Just screaming. Medical emergency, Dalrek said into his communication device. Transport Cleric Tholmas to the medical bay immediately. A beam of light surrounded Tholmas, and he vanished, transported back to their ship. His screams still echoed in Dalrek's mind through the telepathic link. The ambassador turned to face the humans, his own fear now mixing with suspicion. What are you? He asked, his voice cold. What did you do to him? Haiyan Wu held up his hands, his face pale with shock. I swear to you, I did nothing. I thought about my wife and daughter. I thought about the breakfast I ate this morning. Normal thoughts. Nothing that could hurt anyone. But Dalrek could still hear Tholmas screaming in his mind, and he wondered if bringing his people to meet humanity had been the greatest mistake of his life. The medical bay of the Velkari ship hummed with soft blue light, but nothing the physicians did could stop Tholmas from screaming. He lay strapped to a medical bed, his body thrashing against the restraints. His eyes were open but saw nothing. His mouth formed that same continuous shriek of terror that had not stopped for 3 hours. Ambassador Dalrek stood outside the medical bay, watching through a transparent wall. Beside him stood Nestria, the ship's head physician. Her face showed the strain of helplessness. In 300 years of practice, she had never encountered anything like this. His mind is fractured, Nestria said quietly. I can feel the edges of his consciousness through our network, but when I try to reach deeper, there is only chaos. It is as if something broke him from the inside. The humans did this, Dalrek said, his voice hard with anger. They must have some kind of mental weapon. Perhaps their minds generate a psychic poison. Or perhaps, Nestria suggested carefully, there is something about their neural structure that is incompatible with our telepathy. Not a weapon. Simply a difference. Dalrek wanted to believe that. He truly did. But the evidence before him spoke of something darker. No natural mind could do this to a trained cleric. Thomas had read the thoughts of hundreds of species across dozens of worlds. Nothing had ever harmed him. His communication device chimed. It was Hyanwu from the human station. Dalrek accepted the transmission, and the human's face appeared on a small holographic display. "Ambassador, we need to talk," Hyanwu said. He looked tired and worried. "We've reviewed our security footage and our medical scans of me during the ritual. There's nothing unusual. No energy discharge, no psychic emanations, nothing that could explain what happened to Cleric Thomas. I'm so sorry this happened, but I swear to you, we don't understand it either." "Then you will submit to testing," Dalrek said coldly. "Send yourself to our medical bay. Let our physicians examine you, scan your brain, determine what weapon you carry in your mind." Hyanwu's expression hardened. "I'm not a weapon, Ambassador, and I won't be treated like one. But I will allow your doctors to examine me on the station, in neutral territory, with my own medical staff present. We have a doctor here named G1. She's excellent. She can work with your people." Dalrek wanted to refuse. He wanted to demand. But he was a diplomat, and he knew that forcing the issue would only create conflict. "Agreed. But no human comes near Cleric Thomas. Not until we understand what happened." "Of course," Hyanwu said. "We'll begin immediately." The transmission ended. Dalrek turned back to the medical bay and froze. Nastria was no longer standing beside him. She was inside the bay, approaching Thomas's bed. "Nastria, no!" Dalrek shouted, but she either did not hear him or chose to ignore him. The physician placed her hand on Thomas's forehead, the same way Thomas had touched Hyanwu. Dalrek watched through the transparent wall, his heart's pounding. He knew what she was doing. She was entering Thomas's mind directly, trying to see what had broken him from the inside, through the telepathic network that connected all Valkyrie. Dalrek felt Nestria's consciousness brush against Thomas' fractured mind. He felt her push deeper, searching for the source of the trauma. He felt her find something, some memory or impression left behind from the contact with Hyan-Wudad, and then he felt her scream. Not with her voice, but with her mind. A scream that echoed through the telepathic network and made every Valkyrie on the ship stumble and grab their heads in pain. Nestria collapsed beside Thomas's bed. Within seconds, she began screaming aloud too, the same terrible sound that still came from Thomas. Two of the most skilled minds on the ship, both reduced to screaming shells in the space of a few hours. Dalrek activated the ship-wide communication system. "This is the ambassador. All telepathic personnel are forbidden from mental contact with Cleric Thomas or physician Nestria. This is not a request. This is a command. Anyone who disobeys will face immediate consequences." He felt the fear ripple through the crew. In a telepathic society, isolation was the worst punishment. But contamination was worse. Dalrek sent an urgent message to the Valkyrie High Council on the homeworld. He encoded it with the highest priority and the strongest security protocols. The message was simple and terrifying. Humans possess mimetic weapons that destroy telepathic minds on contact. Recommend immediate military response to contain the threat. On the human station, Hyanwu sat in a medical examination room, while G1 ran scanner after scanner over his head. G1 was a young woman with short hair and quick, efficient movements. She had been the colony's chief medical officer for 5 years and had seen her share of strange cases. But nothing had prepared her for this. "Your neural activity is completely normal," G1 said, studying the displays. "Brain chemistry is balanced. No unusual electromagnetic fields. No psychic signatures that our instruments can detect, though admittedly, we don't have much experience measuring psychic phenomena." "So I'm not a weapon," Hyanwu said quietly. You're not a weapon, G1 confirmed. You're just a human. A very normal human. Baora entered the room, carrying a data tablet. I've been analyzing the footage frame by frame. The moment Tholmus made contact, his pupils dilated, his skin color changed, and he began showing signs of extreme distress. It happened in less than a second. Whatever he experienced, it was immediate and overwhelming. But what did he experience? Hyan Wu asked. I was thinking about Su Min and Hei-Wan. I was thinking about the toast I had for breakfast. I was thinking about whether we had enough chairs in the meeting room. Normal thoughts. Boring thoughts. Taejin leaned against the wall, his arms crossed. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe telepaths expect minds to work a certain way and ours don't. Maybe our brains are just wired differently, and that difference is dangerous to them. A new person entered the room. Young-Soo was a specialist in xenopsychology, one of only 3 in the entire colony. He was thin and tall, with wire-rimmed glasses that he wore more out of habit than necessity. He had been reviewing all available data on Velkari biology and culture since the incident. I have a theory, Young-Soo said, his voice hesitant. It's not a pleasant one. Tell us, Hyan-Wu said. The Volcari evolved as telepaths. Their entire civilization is built on the ability to share thoughts cleanly and clearly. From what little we know, their minds are organized, linear, focused. They think one thought at a time, or perhaps a few related thoughts in a neat stream. Young-Soo pushed his glasses up his nose. Human minds are not like that. We think in chaos. Multiple thoughts at once. Random memories popping up. Songs stuck in our heads. Conversations we imagine. Worries about things that might never happen. Our consciousness is a storm of noise. G1's eyes widened. And if a telepath tuned for clean, organized thoughts suddenly encounters that storm, it would be like sticking your head into a tornado, Young-Soo finished. The sheer noise and chaos might be enough to overwhelm their ability to process information. It might even damage their telepathic centers permanently. Hyan-Wu put his head in his hands. So we are weapons. Just by existing. Just by thinking the way we naturally think. We're not weapons, Boer said firmly. We're just different. But if the Velkari don't understand that difference, they'll see us as a threat, Taejin finished. And threats get eliminated. In the silence that followed, each of them understood the gravity of what had happened. First contact had not just gone wrong. It had potentially started a war. 3 days after the incident, a secret message reached the human station. It came through an encrypted channel, bypassing official diplomatic communications. The message was simple. I want to help. Meet me in Docking Bay 7. Come along. Pyarnth. Hyan-Wu showed the message to his team. Taejin immediately objected. It's obviously a trap. They want to lure you away and study you, maybe even dissect you. Or, Young-Soo suggested, it's exactly what it claims to be. Someone on their side who wants to find answers instead of pointing weapons. I'll go, Hyan-Wu decided. But Taejin, you keep a security team nearby. Hidden, but close. If anything goes wrong, you pull me out. Docking Bay 7 was a small auxiliary bay usually used for cargo transfers. When Hyan-Wu arrived, he found a single Velkari waiting for him. She was younger than most of the delegation he had met, her silver skin brighter and less weathered. She wore not robes, but a practical worksuit marked with scientific insignia. Administrator Hyan-Wu, she said, bowing slightly. I am Pyarnth. I am a xenobiological researcher assigned to Ambassador Dalrek's ship. I need you to understand something important. I am acting without authorization. If my people discover this meeting, I will face severe punishment. Then why risk it? Hyan-Wu asked. Because I do not believe you are a weapon, Pyron said simply. I have studied the biological data from the incident. I have analyzed Tholma's telepathic patterns before and after contact. This was not an attack. This was a catastrophic incompatibility between two different forms of consciousness. But my superiors do not want to hear that. They want simple answers. Enemy or friend, threat or ally. The truth is more complex. Haiyan Wu felt a weight lift slightly from his chest. What do you propose? Joint research, Pyron said. You bring your xenopsychologist and your medical officer. I bring my equipment and my expertise. We find out exactly what happened in that moment of contact. And we present evidence to both our governments before this escalates into violence. The ambassador already sent a message to your High Council recommending military action, Haiyan Wu said. How much time do we have? Not much. Perhaps a week before the fleet arrives. But I have something the ambassador does not have. Pyron held up a small device. Before they locked down the medical bay, I managed to record Tholma's neural activity during his initial contact with you. The data is fragmentary, but it might be enough to understand what went wrong. Haiyan Wu called Young-Soo and Ji-Won to the docking bay. When they arrived and saw a Valkyrie waiting, both froze in the doorway. But Haiyan Wu explained the situation, and slowly they approached. You understand that if we work together, we are all taking risks, Young-Soo said to Pyron. Your people will see you as a traitor. Our people might see us as collaborators with a hostile power. I understand, Pyron said, but I am a scientist before I am a citizen. Truth matters more than politics. They moved to a secure laboratory in the human station's research wing. Pyron connected her equipment to the human computer systems with some difficulty. The technology was compatible enough to share data, but the interface required constant translation. What they found in the neural recordings was both fascinating and horrifying. Pyron displayed the data as a visual representation. On one side of the screen, they saw Tholma's mental patterns, clean, organized waves of thought flowing in orderly sequences, beautiful in their simplicity. On the other side, they saw the recording of what Tholmas had encountered in Haiyan Wu's mind. It looked like a storm. Dozens of different thought processes firing simultaneously. Memories surfacing and submerging. Internal dialogue arguing with itself. A song playing on repeat in the background. Worries about the future branching into multiple scenarios. All of it happening at the same time, all the time. By the ancestors, Pyron whispered. How do you function like this? How do you think at all with so much noise? We don't notice it, Ji-Won explained. It's always been this way for us. We filter out what we don't need and focus on what matters. It's automatic. Young-Soo pointed to a section of the data. Look here. This is the moment of contact. See how Tholmas' organized thought patterns try to interpret the chaos. His mind is trying to process every single thread simultaneously, because that's how his telepathy works. He can't filter like we do. He experiences everything at once at full intensity. It would be like trying to drink from a waterfall, Pyron said. No, worse. It would be like trying to drink an ocean through a straw. The sheer volume of information would overwhelm any processing capability. But then, Ji-Won noticed something else in the data. Wait, go back. There. Do you see that? Pyron magnified a section of the neural recording. Buried deep in the chaotic stream of Haiyan Wu's thoughts were flashes of disturbing content. Violent imagery, sexual thoughts, dark humor about death and suffering, aggressive fantasies about people who had annoyed him. What is this? Pyron asked, her voice shaking. These thoughts they are terrible. Were you thinking these things during our peaceful meeting? Haiyan Wu felt his face burn with shame. I don't remember thinking those specific things, but yes. Humans have what we call intrusive thoughts. Random, unwanted thoughts that pop into our heads. We don't mean them. We don't act on them. They're just noise. We ignore them. You have thoughts about violence and you just ignore them? Pyronth looked horrified. Among my people, such thoughts would be immediately shared through the telepathic network. Everyone would know. The individual would face immediate intervention and help. But we're not telepathic, Young-Su explained gently. Our thoughts are private. We can think terrible things and never share them, never act on them. It's normal for us. Every human has a gap between what they think and what they do. Pyron sat down heavily, trying to process this information. So you are all fighting? What did you call it? Intrusive thoughts? You are all constantly generating thoughts you do not mean? Every moment of every day, G1 confirmed. It's part of being human. And you never share these thoughts with each other? You never seek help? Sometimes we do, Hyanwu said. If the thoughts become overwhelming or if they start affecting our behavior. But normal intrusive thoughts? We just live with them. They're background noise. Pyronth looked at the three humans with something between horror and awe. For a Velkari, the idea of having thoughts you do not mean is incomprehensible. Our thoughts are who we are. There is no separation between thinking and being. When Tholmez encountered your mind, he did not just experience chaos. He experienced what we would consider madness. Multiple contradictory thoughts existing simultaneously. Desires you do not act on. Ideas you do not endorse. To him, it would seem like you are multiple beings trapped in one body, all fighting for control. But we're not, Hyanwu said. We're just human. This is how we've always been. Young-Su pulled up more data. Actually, this might explain a lot about human psychology and behavior. We evolved without telepathy, so our thoughts remain private. We developed the ability to think one thing and say another. We learned to control our impulses and override our instincts. Maybe our chaotic minds are actually an advantage. We can consider multiple perspectives simultaneously, weigh different options, imagine scenarios that will never happen. It makes us creative, adaptable, unpredictable. It makes you terrifying, Pyron said quietly. To a telepathic species that relies on mental clarity and shared thoughts for civilization to function, you are living nightmares. You are beings whose minds are in constant conflict with themselves, who think thoughts they do not mean, who maintain walls between their internal reality and their external behavior. Silence filled the laboratory. The weight of understanding settled on all of them. This was not a simple incompatibility. This was a fundamental difference in what it meant to be a conscious being. Finally, Hyanwu spoke. Can we fix this? Is there any way to make our minds compatible? I do not know, Pyron admitted. But we need to try. Because if the High Council believes you are all weapons, they will not take chances. They will eliminate the threat. You mean they'll eliminate us, Ji-won said. They'll wipe out humanity. Yes, Pyron said. They have done it before. The Velkari battle fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. 15 warships, each capable of reducing a planet to ash. They held position near the outer asteroid belt, waiting for orders from the High Council on the human colony. Alarms blared through every building. Dong Hyan, the military commander of the defense forces, stood in the command center watching the tactical displays. His face was grim. The colony had 3 patrol ships and a handful of defensive satellites. Against a Velkari battle fleet, they would last minutes. We need to evacuate, said Kyung-hee, his second in command. Get as many civilians onto transport ships as possible. Maybe some can escape before they attack. Where would they go? Dong Hyan asked. The nearest human world is 6 months away by conventional drive. We don't have enough ships. We don't have enough supplies. Most people would die in space instead of here. So we fight? So we die either way, Dong Haiyan said bitterly. Unless the diplomats can work a miracle. In the secret laboratory, Pyanth had just revealed the most disturbing piece of Valkyrie history. Young-Soo made her repeat it twice to be sure he understood correctly. Your people exterminated an entire species because they had chaotic minds? He asked. It was 3,000 years ago, Pyanth said, her voice heavy with shame. According to the ancient records, there was a species called the Kreshana. They were not telepathic themselves, but when Valkyrie telepaths tried to read them, the same thing happened. Madness, screaming, mental collapse. The High Council determined that the Kreshana were a biological weapon created by some unknown enemy. The Valkyrie military sterilized their homeworld and all their colonies. But they weren't weapons, Ji-won said. They were just different, like us. We know that now, Pyanth said. The records contain biological data. I reviewed them after I began researching your case. The Kreshana neural patterns were remarkably similar to human patterns. Chaotic, multi-threaded, full of intrusive thoughts and background noise. They were simply another species with private minds instead of shared consciousness. And your people killed them all, Haiyan-woo said quietly. Yes, and now the High Council has those same records. They know what happened before. They will recommend the same solution. Young-Soo slammed his fist on the table. We have to stop them. We have to prove that we're not a threat. How? Pyanth asked. Even I find your minds disturbing, and I am trying to help you. To a traditional Valkyrie, your very existence is an affront to everything they understand about consciousness and civilization. Haiyan-woo stood up suddenly. Then I'll prove it personally. Ambassador Dalrek thinks I'm a weapon? Let him read my mind again. But this time, with preparation, with understanding. If he can survive contact with a human mind, knowing what to expect, it proves we can coexist. That is suicide, Pyanth said. Tholmas knew what to expect too, and he still broke. Tholmas didn't know, Haiyan-woo countered. He expected an orderly mind. He got chaos. But if Dalrek knows to expect chaos, if he prepares himself mentally, maybe he can withstand it. And if he cannot? Ji-won asked. If he breaks too? Then we have even less chance of peace. Then at least I tried, Haiyan-woo said. At least I faced it consciously. If my mind is going to doom my species, I should be the one to bear that responsibility. He recorded a message to Ambassador Dalrek on the Valkyrie ship. The ambassador's response came within an hour. He would meet Haiyan-woo on the human station in a neutral medical facility, with both teams present. But he had a condition. Pyanth must be there, Dalrek said. She will explain her illegal research to me, and then she will face appropriate consequences. But first, she will help us understand what to expect. Pyanth accepted without hesitation. She had already committed treason by helping the humans. Facing the consequences was simply the price of doing what she believed was right. The preparation took 2 full days. Ji-won and another human doctor named Minji worked around the clock, developing neural dampeners that might limit the depth of the telepathic connection. The devices were based on Valkyrie technology modified with human medical knowledge. They had no way to test them except to try. Meanwhile, a human named Jae-hoon spent hours teaching Haiyan-woo meditation techniques. Jae-hoon had studied ancient practices from Earth and had taught mindfulness classes in the colony for years. He was calm, patient, and deeply concerned about what Haiyan-woo was attempting. The goal is not to stop your thoughts, Jae-hoon explained as they sat in a quiet room. That is impossible for a human. Instead, you learn to observe your thoughts without engaging them. Let them flow past like clouds in the sky. Acknowledge them, but do not grab onto them. Will it make my mind less chaotic? Hyan-Woo asked. No, but it might make the chaos less overwhelming for someone experiencing it. Think of it like turning down the volume on a loud song. The song is still complex, but it is easier to process at a lower intensity. Hyan-Woo practiced for hours each day. He found it harder than any physical training he had ever done. His mind constantly wandered. Thoughts about his family, about the fleet waiting to destroy them, about whether this would work, about what to have for dinner, about a joke someone told him 3 years ago. The thoughts never stopped. That is normal, Jae-hoon assured him. You are human. This is what we are. On the day of the attempt, the medical facility was crowded with people from both species. Dalrek arrived with 4 guards and 2 physicians. The guards kept their hands on their weapons, watching the humans with obvious distrust. Hyan-Woo sat in the center of the room on a medical chair. He wore the neural dampening device on his head, a band of metal and sensors that looked uncomfortable and probably was. Ji-won and Minji monitored his vital signs on multiple displays. Pyron stood near Dalrek, explaining everything they had learned. The chaotic nature of human thought. The intrusive thoughts that humans did not mean. The constant background noise of consciousness. The gap between thinking and doing that telepathic species found impossible to understand. You are asking me to enter madness voluntarily, Dalrek said when she finished. I am asking you to understand a different kind of sanity, Pyron replied. Humans are not mad. They are simply private in a way we have never encountered. Their chaos is controlled chaos. Their darkness is acknowledged, but not acted upon. They live every moment with thoughts they do not share and impulses they do not follow. It takes incredible discipline. Dalrek looked at Hyan-Woo. The human met his gaze steadily, though fear was evident in his eyes. Why are you doing this? Dalrek asked. You know the risk. Because my people deserve a chance, Hyan-Woo said simply. Because 2 civilizations should not go to war over a misunderstanding. Because I believe you are capable of understanding us if you try. You have more faith in me than I have in myself, Dalrek said. But he approached the chair. Ji-won activated the neural dampeners. The devices hummed softly, creating a field that would theoretically limit how deep the telepathic connection could go. Theoretically, Jae-hoon spoke quietly to Hyan-Woo. Remember what we practiced. Observe the thoughts. Let them flow. Do not fight them, but do not grab them either. Hyan-Woo closed his eyes and began the meditation techniques. His heart rate slowed. His breathing became regular. But his mind remained a storm. That was inevitable. Dalrek placed his hand on Hyan-Woo's temple. The guards tensed. The human doctors leaned forward, ready to intervene. The ambassador opened his mind and reached out. He touched the surface of Hyan-Woo's consciousness and felt the chaos waiting there. Every instinct screamed at him to pull back to save himself. But he thought of Tholmas still screaming in the medical bay. He thought of the fleet waiting for orders to attack. He thought of the Kreshner, extinct because his people had not tried to understand. Dalrek pushed deeper into the storm, and the storm consumed him. For Dalrek, the first moment of full contact was exactly as terrible as he had feared. Hyan-Woo's mind was not one stream of thought but dozens, all flowing at once. Memories of his daughter's laugh mixed with worry about the Valkyrie fleet. A song about rain played in an endless loop somewhere in the background. Random thoughts about whether he had locked his office door intersected with deep fear about dying. Sexual imagery flashed past unbidden. Violent fantasies about what he would do to protect his family appeared and dissolved. All of it happening simultaneously. All of it real. All of it contradicting itself. Dalrek wanted to scream like Tholmas had. He wanted to tear himself away from this madness. But he held on, remembering Pyron's words. This was not madness. This was privacy. This was what it meant to have a mind that no one else could hear. He pushed deeper, past the surface chaos. And there, underneath all the noise, he found something unexpected. He found will. Human will. The constant, tireless effort to be better than the worst thoughts. Every intrusive, violent thought was met with a conscious rejection. Every dark impulse was acknowledged and then set aside. The chaos was not uncontrolled. It was constantly managed, filtered, directed by something deeper than thought itself. Cleric saw Hyun Woo choose kindness over anger, patience over frustration, hope over despair. Not once, but thousands of times in every waking moment. He saw a mind at war with itself, but a mind that never stopped fighting for what it believed was right. And then Cleric understood. Humans were not broken. They were not weapons. They were beings who had evolved without telepathy, without the shared consciousness that made Valkyrie society possible. They had built civilization not by sharing their thoughts, but by controlling them. They had learned to be good, not because others could see their minds, but because they chose to be good despite the privacy of their thoughts. It was the most exhausting thing Cleric had ever witnessed. And also the bravest. He pulled his hand away from Hyun Woo's temple. He stumbled backward, caught by one of his guards. His body was shaking. His mind felt overwhelmed, exhausted, stretched to its limits. But he was not screaming. He was not broken. Ambassador? Pyronth asked urgently. Are you hurt? Cleric looked at her, then at Hyun Woo, who had opened his eyes and was breathing heavily from the strain of the connection. The human looked terrified and hopeful at the same time. You are all at war, Cleric said quietly. With yourselves. All the time. Every moment of every day, you fight to be better than your worst thoughts. And you never stop fighting. Yes, Hyun Woo said simply. That is what it means to be human. Cleric sat down heavily in a nearby chair. I need to contact the High Council immediately. He sent a message that contradicted his earlier recommendation. He explained what he had learned. He described the human mind not as a weapon but as a fundamentally different form of consciousness. He admitted that the Valkyrie had been wrong about the Krishna 3,000 years ago. He pleaded for time to find a solution that did not involve genocide. The High Council's response was cautious, but willing to listen. The battle fleet was ordered to hold position, but not to attack. Cleric was given 1 week to prove that peaceful coexistence was possible. The joint research team worked frantically for days. Pyronth, Youngsu, Ji-won, and Minji were joined by others from both species. A human programmer named Su-bin proved to be the key to the breakthrough. Su-bin specialized in artificial intelligence and neural interfaces. She proposed creating a technological buffer, a device that could translate human thought patterns into a format that Valkyrie telepaths could safely process. It would not eliminate the chaos, but it would organize it into manageable streams, like converting a waterfall into several smaller pipes. Think of it as a translator, Su-bin explained. Not for language, but for consciousness itself. It takes the multi-threaded chaos of human thought and presents it as sequential streams to the telepath. They still experience everything, but not all at once. The prototype was crude but functional. They needed a volunteer to test it. A human named Chan Wu stepped forward. He was a botanist, quiet and thoughtful, who had been practicing meditation even longer than Jae-hoon had been teaching it. If anyone could present the calmest possible human mind, it was Chan-Wu.Ness. TRIA had recovered somewhat from her contact with Tholma's broken mind. She was not the same, would never be the same, but she was functional again. She volunteered to test the buffer device, despite the risks. She wanted to understand what had hurt her. The test took place with even more precautions than Cleric's attempt. Medical teams from both species stood ready. The buffer device was attached to both Chan Wu and Nestria, creating a controlled interface between their minds. Nestria reached out telepathically. The buffer activated, translating Chanwu's thoughts into a format she could process. It was still strange, still more chaotic than any Velkari mind she had ever encountered. But it was manageable. Instead of drowning in an ocean, she was reading a difficult book written in scattered fragments. More importantly, she felt Chanwu's genuine desire for peace, his compassion for what Thomas had suffered, his hope that their species could find a way to be friends. The intrusive thoughts were there, random and sometimes dark, but she could see how Chanwu's conscious mind recognized them as noise and chose his true values instead. When Nestria broke the connection, she was tired, but not traumatized. She looked at Chanwu with new understanding. "You are not what I expected," she said. "Your mind is strange and difficult. But you are not evil. You are not weapons. You are just very, very different from us." The buffer technology was shared with both governments. Engineers and scientists from both species worked to refine it, making it more comfortable and more effective. Within weeks, Velkari telepaths could communicate safely with humans using the devices. Thomas eventually recovered with intensive therapy and time. He never performed telepathy again. The experience had damaged his abilities permanently, but he did not waste his suffering. He wrote extensively about what he had learned, creating text that other Velkari studied to understand the species they had almost destroyed. He called his writings The Courage of Chaos and dedicated them to all beings who fought daily battles inside their own minds. His work became required reading for Velkari diplomats and helped shift his culture's understanding of consciousness itself, the formal alliance between humans and the Velkari Empire was signed 6 months later. Ambassador Dalrek and Administrator Haiyan Wu stood together at the ceremony, both wearing buffer devices that allowed limited telepathic contact between them. "We thought telepathy made us civilized," Dalrek said during his speech. "We thought shared minds made us superior. But you became civilized while fighting your own nature every single day. You learned to be good when no one could see your thoughts. I do not know if my people could do the same." Haiyan Wu smiled, tired but genuine. "You would be surprised what you can endure when you do not have a choice. Welcome to the human condition, Ambassador. It is messy and chaotic, and sometimes terrible. But it is also beautiful in its own way." The colony began to change. Velkari scientists and engineers came to work alongside their human counterparts. The buffer devices became commonplace, allowing collaboration that had seemed impossible weeks earlier. Children from both species met and played together. Though the young Velkari often seemed disturbed by their human friends, ability to think about multiple things at once, Byra and Pyrith became close colleagues, working together on infrastructure projects. Pyrith wore her buffer device almost constantly now, growing accustomed to the strange sensation of touching human minds. She never found it completely comfortable, but she no longer found it terrifying. "Do you ever wish you could think more like us?" Pyrith asked Baara one day as they reviewed blueprints for a new water treatment facility. Baara laughed. "Sometimes, when my mind is racing and I cannot sleep, yes. But mostly no. Our chaos makes us creative. It makes us adaptable. It lets us imagine things that do not exist yet. I think maybe we need the noise to dream." Young-Soo continued his research into comparative psychology. His most recent paper was titled Private Minds and Public Virtues: How Non-Telepathic Species Develop Moral Behavior. It was being studied across the galaxy by telepathic species trying to understand their non-telepathic neighbors. In his conclusion, Young-Soo wrote something that became famous among both humans and Velkari. Perhaps the galaxy needed a species that could survive the storm inside their own heads. Perhaps that is why we are here. Not to show others how to be like us, but to teach them that chaos, properly channeled, becomes strength. That privacy can coexist with community. That beings can be good, not because others watch them, but because they choose to be good, despite the darkness they carry alone. Late one evening, I and Wu stood on the observation deck of the human station, watching the stars. Su-men in heaven had arrived from Earth on a transport ship, and they would be joining him on the colony permanently. His family would be together again. Dalrek found him there, wearing his buffer device as had become his habit when visiting the human section of the station. "I wanted to thank you," Dalrek said quietly, "for your courage, for risking your mind to save both our peoples."